She never saw him watching. He saw everything: the curve of her jaw, the confidence in her stride, the way she moved through crowds like water finding its path. 2 months of distance. One glimpse at an airport terminal. Now he stood across a video call proposing one night that would destroy her discipline forever, and she felt her carefully constructed freedom trembling at its foundation. His eyes held a promise and a threat: "You'll be the one begging for more." Welcome back to African Korean Tales, my beautiful and amazing family. I'm so happy to have you here once again. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss any of our interesting stories. And please take a quick second to like this video, comment, and share it with someone who loves obsessive emotional stories. It really helps the channel grow and boosts our community. Now get comfortable, because today's story is intense. Let's dive right in. The collision happened in silence. Prince Ryu Song Min moved through Incheon International Airport with the practiced ease of someone born into command. His security detail maintained a respectful distance, invisible to most travelers but ready to intervene at a moment's notice. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame, his sharp jawline set in the expression of controlled authority that had become his default. He was there for duty, greeting the Sultan of Brunei, a diplomatic gesture reserved for only the most critical state visits. His family's empire demanded these performances, these public displays of power and tradition that maintained South Korea's delicate web of international alliances. Then she walked past. Song Min's gaze caught on her completely by accident, a woman moving through the terminal with unhurried confidence, her presence somehow both striking and effortless. She was beautiful in a way that defied easy categorization: deep brown skin that seemed to glow under the airport's fluorescent lights, an hourglass figure that her simple travel clothes couldn't disguise, natural hair pulled back into a low bun that emphasized the elegant column of her neck. She carried herself with the posture of someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. She never looked his way. Not once. Something stirred in his chest: curiosity, perhaps, or recognition of something he couldn't name. But his chief security officer was already gesturing toward the VIP arrival gate, and duty pulled him away from that fleeting moment like a tide withdrawing from shore. The Sultan's plane was landing. The world kept turning. Song Min forgot her face within the hour, buried beneath diplomatic pleasantries and political strategy. 7 weeks later, fate tightened its grip. Song Min had returned to Incheon Airport for a private departure, a rare weekend away from palace obligations. He was traveling under minimal security, dressed casually in dark jeans and a leather jacket, his identity obscured by sunglasses and the general anonymity that came with not being in official royal dress. He spotted her again purely by chance. She emerged from customs with nothing but a refined leather travel bag slung over her shoulder and a vintage camera hanging from her neck. The same woman. The same effortless grace. This time, he watched as she paused near the terminal exit, pulled out her phone, and smiled at something on the screen before disappearing into a waiting car. This time, the curiosity didn't fade. Song Min made a decision that surprised even himself. He had his security team identify her. It took less than an hour. Her name was Zoe Jasper, 28 years old. American-born, but she hadn't maintained a permanent residence in any country for more than 3 months in the past 5 years. She was a digital cultural nomad, a storyteller and cultural curator who embedded herself in countries, learned their languages, participated in their traditions, documented their artisan crafts, and shared these experiences through a thriving online platform. She didn't chase tourist attractions. She chased understanding. And she'd just arrived in South Korea for a 3-month immersion. Song Min studied the information his team provided with the same intensity he applied to diplomatic negotiations. Her social media presence was polished but authentic: videos of her hands shaping pottery in Morocco, photographs of her learning traditional weaving in Peru, essays about the philosophy behind Japanese tea ceremonies. She was brilliant, independent, passionate about preservation and respect. And she had absolutely no idea who he was. The realization hit him like cold water. If he approached her as Prince Ryu Song Min, she would see the title first. The wealth, the power, the impossibility of anything real. She would see everything except him. So he made another decision, one that his security team protested and his royal advisors would have considered borderline treasonous. He would approach her as an ordinary citizen. No titles, no palace, no crown weighing down every word. Just a man interested in a woman who moved through the world like she was collecting its secrets. 3 days later, Song Min found himself at Insadong's artisan market, watching Zoe from across a crowded street. She stood before a vendor selling traditional Korean pottery, her fingers hovering over a small celadone bowl with the careful reverence of someone who understood its value beyond price. She spoke to the elderly vendor in halting but earnest Korean, her accent charming rather than offensive, her smile genuine as the woman corrected her pronunciation. Song Min's chest tightened watching her negotiate, not haggling down the price, but asking about the technique, the history, the family tradition behind the craft. She paid what the vendor asked without question, then carefully wrapped the bowl in cloth and placed it in her bag like it was made of diamond rather than clay. He approached before he could second-guess himself. The celadone glaze technique dates back to the Goryeo dynasty, he said in English, his voice low and careful. That particular style, with the sangam inlay, is nearly 1,000 years old. Zoe turned, and for the first time, her dark eyes met his directly. The impact was physical. I know, she said simply, her voice carrying the warm depth of someone used to speaking to strangers across language barriers. That's why I bought it. The vendor's family has been making these for 6 generations. Song Min smiled despite himself. You speak Korean? Badly, she admitted with a laugh that seemed to light something in the air between them. But I'm learning. I always learn the language of wherever I'm staying. It's disrespectful not to try. Where are you from? Everywhere, recently. She tilted her head, studying him with open curiosity. You're Korean, but your English is flawless. Educated abroad. London, he said, which was true. And you're American, but you don't sound like you're from anywhere specific. That's because I'm not. She adjusted the camera around her neck. I'm a digital nomad. I document cultural traditions and artisan crafts. Right now, I'm here to understand South Korea beyond the K-pop and kimchi stereotypes foreigners love. How long are you staying? 3 months. Maybe longer if the visa situation cooperates. Song Min felt something settle in his chest, relief, perhaps, or opportunity. Then you'll need a guide. Someone who actually knows where to find the real culture, not the tourist traps. Zoe's smile was polite but guarded. That's kind of you, but I prefer to discover things on my own. It's part of my process. Of course. He didn't push. Desperation had never been his style. But if you change your mind, I'm Song Min. I know this city better than most, and I promise I won't steer you toward anything you can find in a guidebook. She studied him for a long moment, long enough that he wondered if somehow, impossibly, she recognized him. But then she simply nodded. Zoe, she offered. And I appreciate it. Really. But I have a pretty packed schedule for the next few weeks. I understand. He pulled out his phone. Could I at least give you my number? In case you need recommendations. Or get lost. Seoul can be overwhelming for newcomers. There was a flicker of hesitation in her expression, but she handed him her phone. He typed in his private number, not the official palace line, not his public contact, but the personal cell that only a handful of people had access to. When he handed it back, their fingers brushed. The contact was brief, accidental, and absolutely electric. Zoe pulled her hand back slightly too quickly, her composure cracking for just a moment before she recovered. Thank you, Song Min. That's very kind. It's selfish, he admitted with a smile that didn't quite reach his usual royal restraint. I'm hoping you'll text me when you find something amazing and I can pretend I discovered it first. She laughed, a real laugh this time, unguarded and bright. I'll consider it. Then she turned and disappeared into the market crowd, leaving Song Min standing alone with the unfamiliar sensation of wanting something he couldn't simply command into existence. That evening, Song Min sat in his private study within the palace walls, staring at his phone with the focus usually reserved for diplomatic crises. She hadn't texted. He hadn't expected her to, not really, but the silence felt louder than it should. His younger sister, Princess Ryu Minji, appeared in his doorway with the knowing smirk of someone who'd watched her brother maintain perfect emotional control for 29 years and could therefore spot cracks in his armor from a mile away. "You look like you're waiting for someone to declare war," she observed, dropping into the chair across from his desk. "I'm reading," Song Min said flatly. "You're staring at your phone like it personally offended you." Minji leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Who is she?" "There's no she. Liar. You've had the same expression since you came back from Insadong this afternoon. You met someone." Song Min set his phone down with deliberate care. "I'm not discussing this with you." "Which means I'm right." Minji grinned. "What's her name? Is she Korean? Does she know who you are?" The last question hit closer than his sister realized. "She doesn't," Song Min admitted quietly. "And I'd like to keep it that way. For now." Minji's expression shifted from teasing to genuine curiosity. "You're approaching her as a civilian?" "Yes." "That's surprisingly normal of you. Also potentially disastrous." "I'm aware. But you're doing it anyway." "Yes." His sister studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "She must be extraordinary." Song Min didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. 2 days passed before his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. "Song Min? It's Zoe. I'm at the Bukshan Hanok village, and I have a question about architectural preservation ethics that I think you might be able to help with. If you're free." He was in the middle of a budget meeting with the Minister of Culture when the text arrived. He read it 3 times, feeling something dangerous and unfamiliar uncurl in his chest. Hope, maybe. Or anticipation. He excused himself from the meeting, something he never did, and texted back within 30 seconds. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't move." His security team scrambled to accommodate the sudden departure, but Song Min barely noticed their protest. He changed out of his formal attire into civilian clothes, dismissed his visible guards, and took his private car directly to Bukshan. He found Zoe standing in front of a traditional Hanok house, her camera in hand, frowning at the ornate wooden architecture with the expression of someone wrestling with a moral dilemma. "What's the ethical question?" he asked by way of greeting. She turned, and her smile was immediate and bright. "Song Min, thank you for coming. Look," she gestured at the Hanok. "This house is clearly occupied by an actual family, but tourists are constantly taking photos, walking through their courtyard, treating it like a museum. The family has put up signs asking for privacy, but people ignore them. Do I have the right to photograph this, even from the street, knowing it contributes to their discomfort?" Most people, Song Min thought, wouldn't have even noticed the family's discomfort, let alone cared about it. "No," he said honestly. "You don't have that right. Not ethically." Zoe nodded, lowering her camera. "That's what I thought. But then how do I document the architecture without exploiting the people who live here?" "You ask permission. You offer to compensate them for their time. You make it clear you're not treating their home as a backdrop." He paused. "Or you photograph the empty Hanok houses that have been converted into cultural centers. They exist for that purpose." "Where?" "I'll show you." He gestured down the street. "But first, have you eaten?" "Not since breakfast." "Then we're fixing that first. You can't make ethical decisions on an empty stomach." Zoe laughed, falling into step beside him with an ease that felt both natural and impossibly rare. "Is that a Korean philosophy?" "It's a Song Min philosophy. But I'm working on making it universal." They spent the afternoon together, lunch at a small family-owned restaurant where Song Min was known but not bothered, followed by a walking tour of Bukshan's public cultural sites where Zoe could photograph freely. She worked with intense focus, sometimes spending 10 minutes composing a single shot, asking him questions about historical context, architectural significance, the relationship between traditional aesthetics and modern preservation. She treated his answers with the respect of someone who genuinely wanted to learn, not just extract information for content. And somewhere between the fourth Hanok house and the moment she laughed at his dry observation about tourist photography trends, Song Min realized he was in serious trouble. Because this wasn't curiosity anymore. This was fascination. Attraction. The dangerous beginning of something that could consume him if he let it. As evening settled over Seoul, they found themselves at a small tea house tucked away from the main streets, surrounded by the quiet murmur of conversation and the delicate scent of green tea. Zoe wrapped her hands around her cup, her expression thoughtful. You know a lot about Korean culture. More than most people I've met. I studied it extensively, Song Min said carefully. History, preservation, cultural heritage. It matters to me. Why? Because culture is identity. Lose one and you lose the other. Zoe's eyes brightened with recognition. Exactly. That's exactly why I do what I do. People think I'm just traveling for fun, but I'm trying to preserve stories, traditions, practices that could disappear in another generation. I want to create a digital archive that respects the source while sharing it with people who might never have access otherwise. That's ambitious. It's necessary. She set down her cup. So much has already been lost to colonization, globalization, commercialization. If we don't document what remains respectfully, ethically, it'll vanish. Song Min found himself leaning forward, drawn in by her passion, her conviction. You could do that from anywhere. Why keep moving? Because understanding culture isn't something you can do from a distance. You have to live it. Eat the food. Learn the language. Participate in the rituals. Otherwise, you're just a tourist with a camera. She smiled a little sadly. And I guess I haven't found anywhere that felt like home yet. So I keep looking. Something tightened in Song Min's chest, an unfamiliar urge to offer her exactly that. Home. Permanence. A reason to stay. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not while she still didn't know who he was. As they left the tea house, Zoe's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then grimaced. Problem? Song Min asked. My Airbnb host just canceled on me. Apparently, there's a family emergency and they need the space. She scrolled through her phone with visible frustration. Everything else in my price range is either booked solid or in neighborhoods I specifically wanted to avoid. Where were you staying? Seongsadong. I liked being near the creative district. Song Min made a decision before logic could intervene. I have a property in Seongsadong. A small guest house. It's empty right now. Zoe looked up sharply. I can't. You can. And, before you argue, let me be clear, I'm not offering it for free. You'll pay standard rental rates. I'm just offering it because it's available and you need housing. He pulled out his phone. I'll have my property manager send you the details. You can decide after you see it. She hesitated, clearly torn between practicality and the discomfort of accepting help from someone she'd just met. Zoe, he said gently. It's just a house. I'm not offering you the crown jewels. That made her laugh. Okay. Yes. Thank you. If the property manager confirms the price is reasonable, I'll take it. The price, Song Min knew, would be exactly what she'd been paying for the Airbnb, even though the guest house was worth 3 times that amount. But she didn't need to know that part. The following morning, Zoe moved into the Seongsadong guest house, a beautifully renovated traditional Korean home with modern amenities, a private courtyard, and enough space to work comfortably. Song Min received the confirmation text from his property manager along with a note. She tried to negotiate the rent up, sir. Said the place was too nice for the price he listed. I've never seen anyone do that before. He smiled despite himself. Of course she did. Over the next 3 weeks, Song Min and Zoe fell into an easy rhythm that felt anything but casual. They met several times a week, sometimes for lunch, sometimes for impromptu cultural excursions, once for a late-night food market tour where Zoe insisted on trying everything and Song Min found himself laughing more than he had in years. She never asked him about his work beyond the vague consulting cover story he'd provided. She never pressed for personal details he wasn't willing to share. She simply existed in the moment with him, challenging his observations, teasing him when he got too serious, pulling him into her orbit with the gravitational force of someone who had no idea how extraordinary she was. The chemistry between them was undeniable, Charged glances across crowded restaurants, the way conversations stretched long past when they should have ended, the careful distance they maintained because they both knew what would happen if that distance collapsed. Song Min found himself thinking about her at the most inappropriate times, during diplomatic meetings, while reviewing security briefings, in the middle of his morning workout when his mind should have been empty. He was obsessed. And he was terrified she didn't feel the same. Then, one evening at a traditional Korean performance hall, everything shifted. They'd come to watch a pansori performance, traditional narrative singing, and Zoe had been completely mesmerized, her eyes bright with tears during the emotional climax. As they left the theater, she turned to him with an expression so open, so vulnerable, that Song Min forgot how to breathe. "Thank you," she said softly, "for sharing this with me, for helping me see Seoul through your eyes instead of my own assumptions." "It's not a burden," he said quietly. "Spending time with you is the best part of my week. Every week." The admission hung between them like a confession. Zoe's breath hitched slightly. "Song Min, have dinner with me," he interrupted, before courage could fail him. "Not as friends. Not as tour guide and traveler. As something more." She stared at him, and for a terrible moment, he thought she would refuse. Then she smiled, slow and devastating and full of something that looked dangerously like hope. "Okay," she said. "Yes. Dinner. This weekend." Song Min felt victory settle into his bones like fire finally catching kindling. The week that followed was torture. Song Min threw himself into preparations with the obsessive attention to detail that usually governed his diplomatic work. He selected a restaurant, private, intimate, but not so obviously exclusive that it would raise questions. He arranged for his security to maintain distance. He rehearsed conversations in his head like they were negotiation strategies. Minji found the whole thing endlessly entertaining. "You're nervous," she observed, watching him adjust his shirt collar for the third time before leaving the palace. "I'm not nervous. You're terrified. It's adorable. I've never seen you like this." "That's because I've never felt like this," Song Min admitted, then immediately regretted the honesty when his sister's expression softened into something dangerously close to sympathy. "She really doesn't know who you are?" "No. What are you going to do when she finds out?" "I don't know." Minji stepped forward, adjusting his collar with the practiced ease of someone who'd helped him prepare for formal events their entire lives. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. If she's falling for you, it should be for you, not the crown. And if she leaves when she learns the truth, then she was never going to stay anyway." Minji squeezed his shoulder. "But I don't think that's going to happen. You're more than the title, Song Min. You've just spent so long wearing it, you forgot." The dinner was everything Song Min had hoped for and nothing he'd prepared for. Zoe arrived wearing a simple black dress that somehow made her look more stunning than any designer gown he'd ever seen at state functions. Her natural hair was styled in soft curls that framed her face, and when she smiled at him, Song Min felt the ground shift beneath his feet. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, about her travels and his studies, about philosophy and art, and the strange loneliness that came with always being in motion. "Do you ever want to stop?" he asked at one point, genuinely curious. "To settle somewhere permanently?" Zoe considered the question carefully. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I'm running from something, but I'm not sure what. And part of me thinks this is my life, understanding the world one country at a time." She looked at him directly. "What about you? Do you ever want to leave Seoul?" "No," Song Min said honestly. "This is home. This is where I belong. Even with all the obligations? The expectations." He'd never mentioned obligations or expectations, and the observation was sharp enough to make him pause. "You notice things," he said instead of answering. "It's what I do." Zoe leaned forward slightly. "You talk about Seoul like someone who loves it but is also trapped by it. And you're careful never to discuss your work in detail. Which means either you're doing something illegal or something so significant that anonymity matters." Song Min's heart stopped. "I'm not investigating you," Zoe added quickly. "Your privacy is yours. I recognize the pattern. I've met people all over the world who carry weight they can't talk about. And it doesn't bother you? Not knowing. Everyone has secrets, Song Min. I'm not entitled to yours just because we're having dinner. She smiled, gentle and genuine. When you're ready to share them, I'll listen. Until then, I'm just happy to be here. The relief was overwhelming. She wasn't pushing. She wasn't demanding. She was simply giving him space to be whoever he needed to be. And God help him, he was falling for her completely. As they left the restaurant, walking through Seoul's quiet evening streets, Song Min's hand found hers. The contact was deliberate this time, fingers intertwining, palms pressing together, the physical acknowledgement of something neither of them had been willing to name until now. Zoe looked up at him, her dark eyes reflecting the streetlights and something deeper, more vulnerable. This is terrifying, she admitted softly. Why? Because I'm leaving eventually. And you're staying. And I don't know how to do this, she gestured between them. When there's an expiration date. Song Min stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Then don't think about the expiration date. Think about right now. Right now, I want to kiss you, Zoe said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then do it. She did. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, questioning, a slow exploration of possibility. Then Zoe's hands slid up to his shoulders, and Song Min's control shattered like glass. He pulled her closer, deepening the kiss with all the restraint he'd been maintaining for weeks, finally dissolving into desperate need. She tasted like wine and promise, and when she made a small sound of pleasure against his mouth, Song Min felt every carefully constructed wall he'd built around himself crack wide open. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Zoe pressed her forehead against his chest. Song Min, she whispered. What are we doing? Something reckless, he admitted. Something that scares me more than anything I've ever done. Me too. They stood there in the middle of the quiet street, holding each other like they were the only two people left in the world, while Seoul's city lights flickered overhead and the future waited in the distance like a storm gathering strength. Neither of them mentioned the expiration date again. But they both knew it was coming. The next 4 weeks felt like falling and flying at the same time. Song Min and Zoe navigated their relationship with the careful balance of two people who knew they were building something beautiful on unstable ground. They stole moments between her work schedule and his increasingly difficult-to-explain consulting obligations, meeting in quiet corners of Seoul where they could simply exist together without performance or pretense. Song Min found himself doing things he'd never done before, canceling minor diplomatic engagements, delegating responsibilities, creating space in a life that had never had room for spontaneity. His staff noticed. His sister definitely noticed. But he didn't care. For the first time in his life, something mattered more than duty. Someone mattered more. One afternoon, Song Min picked Zoe up from a pottery workshop where she'd spent the morning learning traditional techniques. She emerged covered in clay dust, her face bright with accomplishment, holding a slightly lopsided bowl she'd made with her own hands. It's terrible, she announced cheerfully, showing him the uneven rim. It's perfect, Song Min corrected, taking the bowl carefully. Because you made it. You're biased. Completely. He kissed her forehead, not caring that they were standing on a public street. And I wouldn't have it any other way. They walked to a nearby park, settling on a bench overlooking a small pond where elderly men practiced Tai Chi and synchronized formation. Zoe leaned against his shoulder, and Song Min wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her closer against the autumn chill. I've been thinking, Zoe said quietly, about extending my visa. Staying longer than 3 months. Song Min's heart kicked hard against his ribs. How much longer? I don't know. 6 months, maybe? There's so much here I haven't documented yet. And she trailed off, her fingers finding his. And there's you. Zoe. I know it's complicated. I know you have obligations you can't discuss, and I have this life that requires movement. But I'm willing to try figuring it out if you are. Song Min felt something dangerous and consuming bloom in his chest, hope mixed with terror, desire tangled with the inevitable revelation that would come when she learned the truth about who he was. I want that, he said honestly. More than I've wanted anything. Then we'll make it work. Zoe turned to look at him directly. Whatever your secrets are, Song Min, I can handle them. I promise. He wanted desperately to believe her. That evening, They attended a traditional Korean festival together, lanterns glowing against the darkening sky, street vendors selling tteokbokki and hotteok, the air filled with laughter and music. Zoe moved through the crowd with her camera, documenting the celebration with the respectful distance she always maintained. She asked vendors for permission before photographing their stalls, learned the names of children before taking their pictures, thanked everyone in careful Korean that was improving daily. Song Min watched her work with the fascination of someone witnessing artistry in motion. And then someone recognized him. It was inevitable, really. He'd gotten careless, too comfortable in his civilian disguise, too focused on Zoe to maintain the hyper-awareness that usually governed his public appearances. An older woman approached hesitantly, her eyes widening with recognition. "Your Highness?" "Prince Ryu Song Min." The world stopped. Song Min's training kicked in immediately, the polite smile, the gracious acknowledgement, the subtle gesture to his security team that materialized from the crowd like shadows gaining form. But all he could focus on was Zoe's expression as she turned toward him, confusion giving way to realization, then shock, then something that looked terrifyingly like betrayal. "Your Highness," she repeated, her voice barely audible over the festival noise. The older woman bowed deeply. "Forgive the interruption, Your Highness. I just wanted to express my gratitude for your family's cultural preservation initiatives." Song Min responded with automatic politeness, his attention split between the woman's gratitude and Zoe's frozen stillness. When the woman finally left, when the moment of public recognition ended and the crowd's attention drifted elsewhere, Zoe simply stared at him. "We need to talk," she said flatly. "Somewhere private." They ended up at the Seongsadong guest house, the property Song Min owned, though Zoe had believed it belonged to an anonymous property manager. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Zoe paced the courtyard like a caged animal, her arms wrapped around herself, while Song Min stood near the door, giving her space even though every instinct screamed to reach for her. "A prince," Zoe finally said. "You're a prince. The Ryu family. The imperial family." "Yes. And you didn't think that was relevant information?" "I wanted you to know me," Song Min said quietly. "Not the title. Not the crown. Just me. But the title is Ryu Song Min. It's not something you can separate out like it doesn't matter." She turned to face him, and he saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "Do you understand what you've done? I've spent weeks falling for someone who doesn't actually exist. I exist. Everything between us has been real." "Has it?" Zoe's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Because the man I've been with told me he studied Korean culture. He didn't mention he's literally responsible for preserving it at a national level. The man I've been with said he had consulting obligations. He didn't mention those obligations include state dinners, diplomatic negotiations, and representing an entire country. I never lied. You lied by omission, which is worse." Zoe's voice cracked. "I told you I specifically avoid getting involved with people whose power could consume me. I told you I value independence above everything else. And you let me fall for you anyway, knowing that your life is the exact opposite of everything I need to survive." Song Min took a step forward, desperate. "Zoe, please. End this house." She gestured around the courtyard. "You own this house. The property manager, story was fiction. You've been subsidizing my rent, haven't you? You needed housing. I needed honesty." Zoe's composure finally shattered. "I can't be with someone who treats me like I'm too fragile to handle the truth. I can't be with someone whose entire existence is surveillance, protocol, and public performance. That's not freedom, Song Min. That's a cage, and I won't let you trap me in it." "I'm not trying to trap you." "Then what are you trying to do?" "I'm trying to love you." The words exploded from him before he could stop them. "I'm trying to figure out how to make this work because the idea of losing you is unbearable. I know I should have told you sooner. I know I made mistakes. But everything I feel for you is real, Zoe. The title doesn't change that." Zoe wiped her eyes roughly. "But it changes everything else. Your life requires permanence, visibility, tradition. Mine requires movement, anonymity, freedom. There's no compromise that doesn't destroy who one of us is." "Then we'll find a third option." "There is no third option." Zoe's voice broke completely. This was always going to end. I just thought I'd have more time before it did. Song Min felt panic claw at his throat. You're leaving. I have to. She straightened her shoulders, pulling together the pieces of her composure with visible effort. I'm leaving for Armenia next week. I have commitments there of a residency program I committed to months ago. The timing, it's probably for the best. Don't do this. I have to, Zoe repeated, and this time her voice was gentle, which somehow hurt worse than anger. Because if I stay, I'll lose myself trying to fit into your world. And if you give up your responsibilities to be with me, you'll resent me eventually. Neither of those endings is worth the heartbreak. She walked past him toward the house, and Song Min's hand shot out, catching her wrist. One more night, he said desperately. Give me one more night before you go. Zoe looked at him with such sadness that Song Min felt something crack in his chest. I can't, she whispered. If I do, I won't be strong enough to leave. Then she pulled free and disappeared into the house, leaving Song Min standing alone in the courtyard while his entire world collapsed around him. The week that followed was agony. Zoe avoided his calls, ignored his messages, and when Song Min showed up at the guest house, she was never there. His security team reported that she was maintaining her work schedule, visiting cultural sites, conducting interviews, finishing her documentation, but she did it all with the mechanical efficiency of someone going through motions. Song Min threw himself into work with equal numbness. He attended state functions, reviewed policy proposals, fulfilled every obligation that had been waiting patiently for his attention. But at night, alone in his private quarters, he stared at his phone and wondered if this was what heartbreak felt like. Princess Minji found him 3 days before Zoe's scheduled departure, sitting in the palace gardens at 2 a.m, looking like he hadn't slept in days. You look terrible, she said, settling beside him on the bench. Thank you for that observation. She's really leaving? Yes. And you're really letting her go? Song Min's laugh was hollow. What choice do I have? She's right. My life is incompatible with hers. Asking her to stay would be selfish. Since when do you care about being selfish? Minji challenged. You're a prince. You've spent your entire life being told the world bends to accommodate you. And the one time something actually matters, you're just going to surrender. It's not surrendering. It's cowardice. His sister's voice was sharp. You're afraid. Afraid that if you fight for her and she still leaves, it'll prove that the title matters more than the person. But that's not what she said, is it? Song Min turned to look at her. What are you talking about? She said your life requires permanence and hers requires movement. She said there's no compromise. But Song Min, you're literally one of the most powerful people in this country. If anyone can create a third option, it's you. You're just too scared to try. The words hit like a physical blow. Because Minji was right. He'd accepted Zoe's decision without fighting because some part of him, some deeply buried, desperately insecure part, believed she was right. That the crown was a cage. That he was a cage. That asking her to love him meant asking her to sacrifice everything. But what if that wasn't true? What if there was a way, unconventional, unprecedented, perhaps even scandalous, to bridge the impossible distance between their two worlds? Song Min made his decision at 3 a.m, sitting in his study with his head in his hands and Minji watching him with the patient expectation of someone who'd always believed her brother was capable of more than duty. I need your help, he said finally. Anything. I need you to cover for me. For a while. Maybe a long while. He looked up, and his expression was the same fierce determination that had carried him through diplomatic negotiations, political challenges, and every impossible situation the crown had demanded of him. Because I'm going to Armenia. Minji smiled, bright and proud and absolutely unsurprised. About time. Zoe left Seoul on a rainy Thursday morning, her heart feeling like shattered glass held together by sheer will. She told herself it was the right decision. The smart decision. That staying would have destroyed her independence, her work, everything she'd built over 5 years of disciplined freedom. She told herself she'd forget him eventually. That time and distance would soften the sharp edges of this grief. She told herself a lot of things she didn't believe. Armenia welcomed her with ancient stone monasteries, mountain landscapes, and a cultural history so rich it should have consumed her attention completely. Instead, she thought about Song Min constantly. She thought about his laugh, the careful way he'd held her pottery bowl, the intensity in his eyes when he'd said he was trying to love her. She thought about the life she'd rejected not because she didn't want it, but because she was terrified of losing herself inside it. 3 days after her arrival, her phone buzzed with a video call request. Song Min's name lit up the screen and Zoe's heart stopped. She should ignore it. She should block his number. She should do anything except answer. She answered. Song Min's face filled her screen, and the relief on his expression was so raw it physically hurt to witness. You answered, he said quietly. I shouldn't have. I'm glad you did. They stared at each other through the screen, thousands of miles apart, the connection crackling with all the unsaid words, unresolved feelings, impossible longing neither of them knew how to name. How's Armenia? Song Min asked finally. Beautiful. Complicated. Lonely. Zoe's voice cracked slightly. How's Seoul? Empty without you. The honesty was devastating. Song Min. I know, he interrupted gently. I know we ended things. I know you need space. But Zoe, I can't stop thinking about you. I can't sleep. I can't focus. You're everywhere and nowhere, and it's killing me. Zoe closed her eyes against tears. It's killing me too. Then why are we doing this? Because there's no other choice. What if there was? Zoe's eyes snapped open. What? Song Min leaned forward, and the intensity in his expression was the same fierce determination she'd seen when he negotiated with vendors, argued about cultural philosophy, kissed her like the world was ending. What if I told you I've been working on a proposal? A way for you to maintain your nomadic work while still being part of my life. That's impossible. Maybe. But I need to try. He paused. Can we keep talking? Like this? Just talking. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking you to commit to anything. I just need to hear your voice. It was a terrible idea. Zoe knew it was a terrible idea. She agreed anyway. Quick pause. If this story has you hooked, tap like and drop your thoughts below. Now, back to the story. The nightly video calls became routine, Song Min in Seoul navigating royal obligations, Zoe in Armenia documenting ancient manuscripts. They talked about everything and nothing, maintaining the careful illusion that they were friends rather than two people desperately in love with no idea how to make it work. The tension built with each call, lingering glances through screens, conversations that lasted until sunrise in one time zone and midnight in another, the unspoken question hanging between them like a wire pulled taut. What happens when talking isn't enough? 2 weeks into their long-distance arrangement, Song Min's expression shifted mid-conversation to something darker, more intense, more deliberately controlled. I want to ask you something, he said carefully. And I need you to really think about your answer before you respond. Zoe's pulse quickened. Okay. If circumstances were different, if my obligations didn't exist, if your work didn't require movement, would you want to be with me? Song Min. Honestly. Would you? Zoe stared at his face on the screen, at the vulnerability he was offering despite everything. Yes. God, yes. Without hesitation. Then I have a proposal. Something in his tone made Zoe's breath catch. What kind of proposal? Song Min's expression shifted into something that was pure confidence, pure dominance, pure arrogant certainty that made her entire body respond despite the thousands of miles between them. One night, he said quietly. One unforgettable night. That's all I ask. Zoe's heart stopped. What? I'm coming to Armenia. Next week. And I'm asking you for one night together. No promises. No commitments. No future. His eyes held hers through the screen with devastating intensity. Just one night where we stop pretending this distance is sustainable. One night where I show you exactly what you're running from. Song Min. And here's my wager. He leaned closer to the camera, his voice dropping to that low, controlled register that had always unraveled her composure. After that night, if you still want to maintain this distance, I'll respect it. I'll step back. I'll let you go. He paused, and his smile was pure predatory confidence. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. You don't. No. Because I think one night, one single night under my complete attention, my deliberate control, my ability to make you forget every reason you think we can't work will ruin you for anyone else. His eyes never left hers. I think you'll be the one asking for more. Not because I demand it, but because you won't be able to help yourself. The silence that followed was electric. Zoe should refuse. She should tell him he was arrogant, presumptuous, that physical chemistry wasn't enough to bridge the impossible distance between their worlds. Instead, she found herself leaning forward, her pulse racing, her body responding to the promise in his voice like it was already his to command. "One night," she repeated. "One night. That's all I ask. And you think I'll beg for more?" "I don't think." Song Min's smile was dangerous and devastatingly confident. "I know. Because I've been patient, Zoe. I've been restrained. I've held back everything I wanted to do to you since the moment we met because I was trying to be what you needed, gentle, understanding, accommodating." His voice dropped even lower. "But that night? I'm not holding back. That night, you're going to experience exactly who I am when control isn't necessary. And when you realize what you've been denying yourself, when you understand what we could have together, you're going to ask, no, you're going to beg for me to never let you go." Zoe's breath came too fast, her body betraying every rational thought trying to surface. "That's incredibly arrogant," she managed. "It's honest." Song Min's expression softened slightly. "I'm not trying to manipulate you, Zoe. I'm offering you a choice. One night where we stop fighting what we both feel. And then you decide, honestly, completely, what you want. If it's still freedom, still distance, I'll accept that. And if it's not? Then we figure out the impossible together." Zoe closed her eyes, every logical argument she'd constructed over the past 3 weeks dissolving under the weight of his certainty, his promise, the undeniable truth that she wanted this, wanted him, more than she'd wanted anything in years. "Okay," she whispered. "One night. I'll text you the details." Song Min. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze through the screen. "You're wrong, you know. I won't beg." His smile was pure devastating confidence. "We'll see." The call ended, and Zoe sat alone in her Armenian apartment, her heart racing, her body already anticipating something she couldn't name, but desperately craved. She told herself she was still in control. She told herself one night wouldn't change anything. She told herself a lot of things she was fairly certain were lies. The week that followed felt like an eternity compressed into seconds. Song Min arranged everything with the meticulous attention to detail that governed his diplomatic work: private travel, minimal security presence, arrangements at a secluded estate outside Yerevan where they would have complete privacy. He told his family he needed personal time. He delegated responsibilities. He created space in a life that had never had room for spontaneity, and he did it without hesitation because she mattered more than protocol. Minji called him the night before his departure, her tone equal parts concerned and impressed. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "No," Song Min admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." "That's very unlike you." "She's unlike anyone I've ever met." "And if this doesn't work? If she still leaves?" Song Min was quiet for a long moment. "Then at least I'll know I tried everything. That I didn't just surrender because it was easier than fighting." "I'm proud of you," Minji said softly. "For what it's worth." "It's worth everything." Zoe spent the week oscillating between anticipation and terror. She told herself repeatedly that she was in control, that one night wouldn't change the fundamental incompatibility of their lives, that physical chemistry, no matter how intense, wasn't enough to build a future on. She told herself these things while packing carefully, choosing outfits, preparing her apartment like she was going to war rather than meeting a man she'd already kissed, already held, already fallen for despite every attempt at self-preservation. Her best friend, Maya, called from New York with the kind of intervention that only came from years of friendship. "You're falling apart," Maya observed. "I'm fine." "You're absolutely not fine. You're about to sleep with a literal prince who you're convinced you can't be with, and you're pretending this is just a casual hookup. It is just. Don't lie to me, Zoe. You're in love with him." The words hung in the air like an accusation, and a truth Zoe had been avoiding for weeks. "It doesn't matter," she said finally. Love isn't enough when the logistics are impossible. Maybe not. But you'll regret it forever if you don't at least try. Song Min arrived in Armenia on a cold Friday evening, and Zoe met him at the private estate with her heart in her throat and every defense mechanism she'd ever built trembling at its foundation. He stood in the entrance hall wearing simple dark clothes that somehow made him look more regal than any formal attire ever could. His eyes found hers immediately, and the intensity in that gaze was enough to steal her breath. "Zoe," he said quietly, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a promise. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought maybe you'd realize how insane this is and change your mind." Song Min crossed the distance between them in 3 deliberate steps, his hand coming up to cup her face with devastating gentleness. "There's nothing insane about fighting for what I want," he said softly. "And I want you. All of you. Every stubborn, independent, brilliant part of you that thinks you're better off alone." Song Min. One night, he interrupted, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "That's all I asked for. And I intend to make every second of it unforgettable." Then he kissed her, and every argument Zoe had prepared dissolved into desperate need. The kiss was different from before, hungrier, more demanding, carrying all the restraint they'd both been maintaining through weeks of separation and careful video calls. Zoe's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Song Min made a low sound of satisfaction that sent heat pooling through her entire body. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Song Min's expression was pure controlled intensity. "I need you to understand something," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "Tonight, I'm not holding back. I'm not being gentle just to protect your feelings. I'm going to show you exactly what it means to surrender to someone who knows how to command both your body and your mind." Zoe's breath hitched. "I don't surrender. You will." His smile was devastating. "By the time this night is over, you're going to understand exactly why distance is torture. Why this, us, is worth fighting for. And you're going to ask me to never let you go. You're very confident." "I'm very certain." Song Min's hand slid to the back of her neck, his fingers threading through her hair. "Because I know you, Zoe. I know what you need even when you don't say it. And tonight, I'm going to give you everything you've been denying yourself. And if I still leave in the morning?" His expression softened just slightly. "Then I'll accept that I was wrong. But I'm not wrong." Then he kissed her again, and Zoe stopped thinking about morning. What followed was a night that redefined every understanding Zoe had about intimacy, connection, and the dangerous line between independence and surrender. Song Min was patient and demanding in equal measure, reading her body like language he'd been studying for years, pushing her past every carefully maintained boundary with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. He was gentle when she needed gentleness and commanding when she needed control to dissolve. He made her laugh and moan and forget every reason she'd convinced herself this wouldn't work. And when the physical intensity finally gave way to exhausted contentment, when they lay tangled together in the dark with Zoe's head on his chest and his arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she'd disappear, he whispered against her hair, "Tell me you still think one night is enough." Zoe's breath caught because she couldn't lie, not to him, not to herself, not after experiencing what it felt like to be completely known, completely wanted, completely his in ways that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with choice. "It's not," she admitted quietly. "It's not even close to enough." She felt Song Min's smile against her temple. "Then ask me." "Ask you what?" "To stay. To fight for this. To find the impossible solution together." Zoe pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes in the darkness. "What if we can't? Then we'll fail trying." "But Zoe, I would rather fail trying with you than succeed at anything without you." The words broke something open in her chest, all the careful protection, all the rational arguments, all the fear that had kept her running for 5 years. "I want this," she whispered. "I want you. Even though it terrifies me." "Good." Song Min pulled her closer. "Because I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever. We'll figure out the logistics, the compromises, the impossible parts. But you're mine, Zoe. And I'm yours. That's the only part that matters." Zoe kissed him, gentle and desperate and full of something that felt dangerously like forever. "Okay," she said against his lips. Okay, let's try. That's all I needed to hear. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time since leaving Seoul, Zoe felt something she'd convinced herself was impossible. Hope. Morning arrived too quickly and not nearly fast enough. Zoe woke wrapped in Song Min's arms, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, her body aching in ways that made her remember every moment of the night before with devastating clarity. For a few perfect seconds, she let herself simply exist in that space, warm, safe, wanted in ways she'd convinced herself she didn't need. Then reality returned like cold water. "You're thinking too loud," Song Min murmured against her hair, his voice rough with sleep. "I'm trying to figure out how this actually works. Simple. We refuse to accept that it doesn't." Zoe shifted to look at him properly. In the morning light, he looked younger somehow, the weight of his title temporarily absent, just a man who'd fought for what he wanted and won. "Your responsibilities won't disappear because we decide to be together," she said gently. "And my work still requires movement. Those aren't things we can just wish away." "I know." Song Min's hand traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "But here's what I propose. You continue your nomadic work. You document cultures, preserve traditions, maintain the independence that defines you. And I visit you whenever obligations allow. We make time for each other in the spaces between our separate lives. That's months apart at a time. Then we make those months apart bearable by knowing we're choosing each other anyway." He pulled her closer. "Zoe, I'm not asking you to stop being who you are. I'm asking you to let me love who you are while you do it. That's going to be incredibly difficult. Most things worth having are." Zoe studied his face, searching for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that this was romantic optimism rather than genuine commitment. She found only certainty. "What about your family? The palace? They're not going to approve of you being with someone who refuses to settle in Seoul, who can't perform royal duties, who—" "Let me worry about that." Song Min's expression hardened slightly. "My family doesn't dictate who I love. And if they have a problem with it, that's exactly what it is, their problem." You make it sound so simple. Because it is. Everything else is just logistics and compromise. The love part? That's already decided. They spent the weekend cocooned in the private estate, navigating the delicate balance between physical hunger and emotional vulnerability. Song Min showed Zoe the proposal he'd been working on, a detailed plan that involved him taking on more remote diplomatic work, utilizing technology for virtual meetings, creating space in his rigid schedule for extended travel. "You do all this?" Zoe asked, staring at the documents spread across the table. "I'd do more if necessary. But your position will adapt or be irrelevant." Song Min's tone left no room for argument. "I've spent my entire life serving duty, tradition, expectation. And none of it matters if I lose you in the process." Zoe felt tears. Threatening. "I don't want you to resent me. That's not how this works." He pulled her into his lap with the casual dominance that still made her breath catch. "You're not forcing me to choose. I'm choosing. Actively. Deliberately. And I'm choosing you. Even if it means scandal? Criticism? Your family's disappointment. Especially then." His hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. "Because you're worth more than their approval. You're worth everything." By Sunday evening, when Song Min had to return to Seoul for a non-negotiable diplomatic summit, they'd established a framework that was unconventional, complicated, and somehow exactly what they both needed. Zoe would continue her nomadic work, but she'd plan her travel schedule around key dates when Song Min could join her. He would maintain his royal obligations, but carve out time for extended visits, turning diplomatic trips into opportunities to see her, using remote work capabilities to bridge the distance. It wasn't traditional. It wouldn't be easy. But it was theirs. At the airport, Song Min held Zoe like he was trying to memorize the feel of her. 6 weeks, he said against her hair. "I'll be in Georgia in 6 weeks for the Cultural Heritage Conference. Tell me you'll be there." "I'll be there." "Promise me." "I promise." Zoe pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "And Song Min? Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up. For fighting even when I made it impossible." His smile was soft and dangerous. "All at once. I told you I'd ruin you for anyone else. You absolutely did. He kissed her long and slow and full of promise, then forced himself to step away before neither of them could bear to separate. 6 weeks, he repeated. 6 weeks. Zoe watched him disappear through security, her heart simultaneously full and aching, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt something she'd stopped believing in. A future worth staying for. The next 6 weeks tested their commitment in ways neither had fully anticipated. The South Korean media discovered Song Min's trip to Armenia within days, and speculation exploded across news outlets, social platforms, and gossip columns. Palace representatives issued vague statements about personal time and private travel, but the questions didn't stop. Who was he visiting? Why Armenia? Was there a woman involved? Song Min's family called an emergency meeting, his father stern and disappointed, his mother worried about scandal, various advisors arguing about reputation management and strategic damage control. Only Minji stood by his side with unwavering support. He's allowed to have a personal life, she argued during one particularly heated discussion. He's performed every duty asked of him for 29 years. You don't get to dictate who he loves. This isn't about love, their father countered. This is about responsibility. Image. The expectations that come with his position. Then maybe those expectations need to evolve. Song Min's voice was calm but absolute. Because I'm not ending this relationship to preserve some outdated notion of royal propriety. The room fell silent. You're serious about her, his mother said finally, her tone unreadable. Completely. And she's worth the scandal? The criticism? The challenge to everything we've built. She's worth everything. Meanwhile, Zoe navigated her own storm of complications. Her social media platform exploded with messages from followers who'd somehow connected her to the mystery woman in the prince's life. Some were supportive. Many were viciously critical, attacking her appearance, her lifestyle, her worthiness to be associated with royalty. She documented traditional Armenian carpet weaving, visited ancient monasteries, conducted interviews with local artisans, and tried desperately to focus on work while her phone buzzed constantly with notifications she couldn't ignore. Maya called with the kind of direct intervention only best friends could deliver. You need to decide if you can handle this, she said bluntly. Because this attention? It's not going away. If anything, it'll get worse. I know. And I love him anyway. The admission came easier this time. I love him enough to figure out how to survive the attention without losing myself. That's a hell of a commitment. He's worth it. Then you need to prepare yourself. Because the world is going to judge you, critique you, reduce you to a headline. And you can't let it destroy what you're building. Zoe thought about Song Min's face in the darkness, his promises, the way he'd fought for her even when she made it impossible. I won't. I promise. 3 weeks into their separation, the scandal escalated. A tabloid published photographs of Song Min leaving the Armenian estate, accompanied by speculation, half-truths, and entirely fabricated details about Zoe's background. They called her a mysterious foreign influence, questioned her intentions, painted her as someone using the prince for fame or money. Zoe read the articles with sick fascination, watching herself transformed into a caricature, a gold digger, a social climber, a threat to traditional values. Song Min called immediately, fury evident even across the distance. Don't read them, he commanded. Don't give them that power. Too late. Zoe. They're calling me an opportunist. Saying I'm using you for status. Her voice cracked. What if they're right? What if I am destroying your reputation just by existing in your life? Stop. Song Min's tone shifted to that controlled dominance that always cut through her spiraling thoughts. Listen to me very carefully. You are not destroying anything. These people don't know you. They don't know us. And their opinions are utterly irrelevant. But your family will adapt or deal with my disappointment. You matter more. He paused. Do you trust me? Yes. Then trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that I wouldn't fight for this if I thought it was going to destroy either of us. And trust that in 3 weeks, when I hold you again, none of this noise will matter. Zoe closed her eyes, letting his certainty anchor her spinning thoughts. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And Zoe? I love you. Completely. Publicly. I'm not hiding that from anyone. The words landed like a lifeline. I love you too. Good. Now stop reading tabloids and go document something beautiful. That's what you do best. 2 weeks before their planned reunion in Georgia, everything fell apart. Song Min was attending a diplomatic function in Seoul when he received an urgent call from his security team. There had been a credible threat, not against him, but against Zoe. A radical nationalist group had identified her as a foreign corrupting influence and posted detailed information about her location, travel schedule, and daily routines online. The threat was specific enough to be taken seriously. Song Min's blood ran cold reading the report. Images of Zoe in Armenia, details about the guest house in Seoul, speculation about her next destination, all presented with the kind of menace that turned abstract danger into something immediate and terrifying. He made 3 calls in rapid succession: his security team, the Korean intelligence agency, and Zoe. She answered on the second ring. Song Min? What's wrong? Where are you right now? The urgency in his voice must have communicated the severity because her response was immediate. My apartment. Why? Don't leave. Don't go anywhere. I'm sending a security team to you within the hour. What happened? There's been a threat. Against you. Because of me. The words tasted like ash. I'm handling it, but I need you to cooperate with the security team. They're going to move you to a safe location until we neutralize the situation. Silence. Then, Song Min, this is exactly what I was afraid of. Your world putting me in danger. I know. And I'm going to fix it. But right now I need you safe. Can you do that for me? Yes. But Song Min, I'll be there within 48 hours. I promise. Just stay safe until then. The next 2 days were the longest of Song Min's life. He mobilized every resource available: security teams, intelligence networks, diplomatic pressure. He personally reviewed every detail of the threat assessment, approved Zoe's relocation to a secured facility outside Yerevan, and coordinated with Armenian authorities to ensure maximum protection. His family called it excessive. His advisors warned about creating international incidents. His father argued that this proved exactly why royal involvement with civilians was problematic. Song Min ignored all of it. Because Zoe's safety mattered more than protocol, more than political convenience, more than his family's comfort with traditional boundaries. He arrived in Armenia 36 hours after the initial threat with minimal security and maximum determination. The secured facility was a small private estate in the mountains, guarded by teams who reported directly to him. He found Zoe in the main room, looking exhausted and scared and absolutely furious. "This is insane," she said by way of greeting. "Armed guards. Safe houses. All because I fell in love with you." "I know." Song Min crossed to her, pulling her into his arms despite her rigid posture. "And I'm so sorry. This should never have happened. But it did. And it'll keep happening. Every time someone decides I'm a threat to tradition, every time a tabloid needs a story, every time. I'll protect you." His voice was absolute. "Every single time. With everything I have. That's not negotiable." Zoe pulled back to look at him. "For how long? How long can you maintain this level of security, of vigilance, of fighting the world to be with me? Forever. However long it takes. That's not realistic. It's my reality." Song Min cupped her face with both hands. "Zoe, I'm not letting you go because the world is dangerous. I'm going to make the world safer so I can keep you. There's a difference. You can't control everything. Watch me." The threat was neutralized within a week. The nationalist group dismantled through a combination of intelligence work, legal action, and diplomatic pressure that Song Min applied with surgical precision. He stayed with Zoe through all of it, working remotely, conducting meetings from the secured estate, refusing to return to Seoul until he was certain she was safe. They spent evenings wrapped around each other on the estate's balcony, watching the Armenian mountains turn purple in the sunset, navigating the terrible vulnerability that came with knowing love could make you both stronger and more fragile. "I'm not brave enough for this," Zoe admitted one night, her head on his shoulder. "This level of visibility, of danger. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are." Song Min's arm tightened around her. You're exactly what I need, honest, independent, strong enough to call me on my mistakes. The visibility and danger are problems I need to solve. That's not on you. But it affects me anyway. I know. And I'm working on solutions, better security protocols, legal protections, strategies to minimize your exposure while maintaining our relationship. He paused. But Zoe, if this is too much, if you need to walk away for your own safety and sanity, I'll understand. She turned to look at him directly. Do you want me to walk away? God, no. Then I'm not going anywhere. Zoe's smile was shaky but genuine. I signed up for this, the complicated, dangerous, impossible parts. I'm not running just because it got hard. Song Min kissed her with the kind of desperate relief that came from almost losing something irreplaceable. I love you, he said against her lips. So much it terrifies me. Good, Zoe whispered back. Because you terrify me too. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe with anyone else. 2 months later, Zoe stood in the Seoul guesthouse courtyard, the same place where she'd told Song Min their relationship was impossible, watching him negotiate with his family about their future. She'd returned to South Korea at his request for a formal introduction to the royal family, understanding that this meeting would determine whether their unconventional relationship could survive public scrutiny. The meeting itself was tense, formal, and absolutely brutal in its assessment of Zoe's worthiness. Song Min's father questioned her intentions, her background, her ability to understand the responsibilities that came with royal association. His mother expressed concern about scandal, tradition, the impact on Song Min's position. Various relatives and advisors weighed in with opinions ranging from cautiously supportive to outright hostile. Through it all, Zoe maintained the same calm dignity that had carried her through 5 years of navigating foreign cultures, difficult interviews, and complicated logistics. She answered questions honestly, acknowledged concerns without apologizing for who she was, and refused to diminish herself to fit their expectations. Finally, Song Min stood, his voice cutting through the discussion with absolute authority. I appreciate everyone's input, he said quietly. But I need to be clear, I'm not asking for permission. I'm informing you of my decision. Zoe is the woman I love, the woman I'm building a future with, and the woman who will remain part of my life regardless of your approval. The room fell silent. If you choose to support us, we'll be grateful. If you choose opposition, we'll manage anyway. He looked at his father directly. But this is happening. The only question is whether you'll be part of it or outside of it. His father's expression was unreadable for a long, terrible moment. Then Princess Minji spoke up from her place beside Zoe. I support them, she said clearly. And I think anyone who actually watches them together would understand why. They make each other better. One by one, voices joined in, some reluctant, some genuine, but gradually building toward consensus that while unconventional, the relationship wasn't the scandal they'd feared. Song Min's mother spoke last, her tone careful but not unkind. You'll face criticism. From the public, from traditionalists, from people who don't understand. I know, Song Min said. And you're prepared for that? Completely. His mother studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we'll prepare as well. As a family. Together. The official announcement came 2 weeks later, carefully worded, strategically released, acknowledging Song Min's relationship while maintaining appropriate boundaries about privacy and personal choice. The media response was explosive. Some outlets celebrated the modern prince choosing love. Others criticized the abandonment of tradition. Social media erupted with opinions ranging from supportive to viciously cruel. Zoe watched it unfold from the safety of the guest house, Song Min beside her, both of them scrolling through reactions with the detached fascination of watching a storm from solid ground. Any regrets? He asked quietly. About us? Never. Zoe set down her phone. About the attention? Every day. But it's worth it. I'll make it easier. Better security, less exposure. Song Min. She turned to face him fully. Stop trying to fix everything. Some things just are what they are. We're public figures now, you by birth, me by association. We can manage it together without you carrying all the weight alone. I want to protect you. I know. And you do. But let me protect you too. Let me be strong enough to stand beside you rather than behind you. Something in his expression softened, pride mixed with love mixed with the kind of relief that came from being truly seen. Okay, he agreed. Together. Together. 6 months later, Zoe stood in a traditional Korean hanok that had been converted into a cultural center, filming a documentary about preservation techniques with the same passion that had defined her work long before Song Min entered her life. The difference now was the audience, both her loyal followers and new viewers drawn by her relationship with the prince. She'd adapted, finding ways to maintain authenticity while acknowledging the increased visibility, using her platform to discuss cultural respect, ethical documentation, and the responsibility that came with global reach. Song Min appeared in the doorway, having finished an afternoon of diplomatic meetings, still wearing formal attire, but his expression already softening the moment he saw her. "How's it going?" he asked. "Good. Almost done." Zoe wrapped up the filming, thanked the artisans she'd been working with, then crossed to him with the easy familiarity of someone who no longer questioned whether this was real or sustainable. It simply was. "Dinner," Song Min offered. "Please. I'm starving." They walked through Seoul's evening streets hand in hand, trailed at a respectful distance by security, occasionally recognized, but mostly left alone by passers-by who'd grown accustomed to seeing the prince with his unconventional partner. "I have news," Song Min said as they settled into a quiet restaurant booth. The Cultural Heritage Foundation approved the nomadic residency program. Zoe looked up sharply. "Seriously?" "Seriously. Starting next year, we'll fund international artists and cultural documentarians for extended residencies with full support. You'll oversee the program." Song Min. "It's not charity. It's investment in exactly the kind of work you've been doing independently for years. And it means you can continue your nomadic documentation while also having institutional backing, better security, and a permanent base in Seoul when you need it." Zoe felt tears threatening. "You created this for me. I created this for everyone who believes cultural preservation matters. You just happen to be the inspiration and the perfect person to run it." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "This way, you keep your independence, your work, your freedom. And I get to support it rather than compete with it." "I love you," Zoe said quietly. "So much." "I know." His smile was pure devastating confidence. "I told you one night would ruin you for anyone else. You absolutely did." She laughed despite the tears. "And you were completely right. I usually am." 1 year after their first meeting at the Insadong market, Zoe and Song Min hosted a private ceremony at the Seongsadong guest house, not a wedding, but a commitment celebration that honored both their relationship and their unconventional approach to building a life together. Close friends attended. Maya flew in from New York, Minji served as unofficial host, and various people who'd supported them through the impossible year surrounded them with love and laughter. There were no cameras, no media, no performance for public consumption. Just two people choosing each other fully, publicly, in front of the people who mattered most. As evening settled over the courtyard, lanterns glowing warm against the darkness, Song Min pulled Zoe aside to the same spot where she'd once told him they were impossible. "Do you remember what you said here?" he asked quietly. "That your life required permanence and mine required movement. And that there was no compromise that wouldn't destroy one of us. Were you right?" Zoe looked at him, this man who'd fought for her, protected her, loved her with the same intensity he applied to everything else, who'd proven that impossible was just another problem to solve. "No," she admitted. "I was completely wrong. The compromise wasn't about choosing between your world and mine. It was about building something new together. And are you happy?" His voice carried vulnerability despite the confidence. "Truly happy? Devastatingly happy." Zoe reached up to cup his face. "You ruined me for anything less than this. Than us." Song Min's smile was pure triumph. "Good. Because you're mine, Zoe Jasper. Completely. And I'm never letting you go. I don't want you to." He kissed her as lanterns glowed and music played, and the impossible future they'd built together stretched out ahead like an endless road worth traveling. Because some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth the scandal, the danger, the impossible logistics. Some things, some people, were worth everything. And this, right here, was exactly that. 3 years later, Zoe stood in a small village in Morocco, filming traditional weaving techniques while simultaneously conducting a video call with Song Min, who was attending a diplomatic function in Tokyo. Their life had become this: constant motion, strategic planning, stolen moments across time zones, and the absolute certainty that distance was irrelevant when love was this strong. Song Min had kept his promise: better security protocols that allowed Zoe freedom without vulnerability, institutional support that elevated her work without compromising its authenticity, and a relationship that grew stronger rather than fragile despite the complications. Zoe had kept hers too, refusing to diminish herself, standing beside him publicly when necessary, protecting both their relationship and her independence with equal fierceness. They saw each other every 6 weeks minimum, sometimes Song Min traveling to wherever Zoe was working, sometimes Zoe returning to Seoul between projects, always making time feel abundant rather than scarce. The media had eventually lost interest in their scandal, moving on to other stories, other controversies. What remained was a couple who'd proven that impossible was just a challenge waiting to be conquered. "I miss you," Song Min said on the video call, his tie slightly loosened, exhaustion evident but his expression soft. "I miss you too. 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks and then I'm all yours for a month. We're going to that island off Greece you wanted to explore. The one with the ancient mosaics? That's the one. I've already arranged everything." Zoe smiled, the same bright, genuine smile that had caught his attention 3 years ago in an airport terminal. "You're very good at this." "At what?" "Loving me while letting me be myself." "It's easy," Song Min said quietly. "Because loving you is letting you be yourself. Everything else is just logistics." Later that night, alone in her Moroccan guest house, Zoe reviewed footage of the day's work and thought about the life she'd built, still nomadic, still independent, still documenting the world's cultural treasures one country at a time. But now she had something she'd never thought possible: roots that moved with her, home that existed in a person rather than a place, and love that proved distance was meaningless when the connection was absolute. Her phone buzzed with a text from Song Min. 2 weeks. "I'm counting down every second." She texted back, "Me too. I love you. I love you more. And I'm still smug about being right." "About what?" "That one night would make you ask for more. You ended up asking for forever." Zoe laughed, shaking her head at his arrogance, his confidence, his absolutely correct assessment of exactly how thoroughly he'd unraveled her carefully constructed defenses. "You were right," she admitted. "You ruined me for anything less than this." "Good. Because you're mine, Zoe. Always have been. Always will be." "Always," she agreed. And somewhere between Morocco and Tokyo, across thousands of miles and countless obstacles, 2 people who should have been impossible loved each other with the kind of certainty that made everything else irrelevant. Because some nights changed everything. And some loves conquered every reason they shouldn't exist. This was both. The end. You made it to the end, and that means you're truly part of the African Korean Tales family. Thank you for your support. Like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be replying as always, and stay subscribed because the next story is already waiting for you.